Guys, welcome back. It's your big bro Nate making a video today on turning your failure into fuel. So, a lot of people get stuck in their failures, okay? A lot of people get stuck in what they didn't do, what they failed to do, what they tried to do, right? So, it's really easy to get discouraged, guys. Don't get me wrong, okay? Very, very easy to look back. Maybe you're just reeling from a loss, right now. Maybe you failed at an endeavor in life you were trying to go for. Maybe you failed a college class. Maybe you failed out of a certain job. Maybe you failed out of, goodness, guys, and the list could go on. You might have failed at, maybe you were training for a marathon. Maybe you were training for a physical event like powerlifting or something, right? And you failed, okay? So how do you turn that failure into fuel? Okay, so funny enough, you can actually take the word failure, and if you take away the air, you can turn it into fuel. So kind of neat, little wordplay there. But how do you turn the failure into something useful? Okay, so you failed, messed up, you're stuck, you don't know what you're doing, right? How do you turn that into fuel? Okay, you have to dig deep, you have to find that fire, you have to find what you were good at. So let's say you failed, for instance, a powerlifting event. Let's say you're supposed to deadlift, 450 pounds to beat your record or to beat a record, and you could only end up deadlifting like 430 pounds, right? Well, guys, the neat thing about it is you can always look at what you failed at and go, okay, well, I was able to get this far. I was able to get up to 430 pounds, right? 20 pounds off from 450, that's a pretty amazing accomplishment. Maybe you failed that particular event, but you didn't fail, right? You didn't fail overall because you were still able to build an incredible amount of strength from where you were, right? Let's say you are, in college, you failed a college class. You think it's the end of the world. You think because you failed this one area that, that's it, you're done with college, you have to retake the class, right? You can take that as a learning experience. You can take that as, you can turn that into fuel. You can use that as well. You know the material really, really well now. Now you can turn around and go back to that course, to that class, and give it your all. And you can overcome it. I know plenty of people in college, they failed a college course and they came back and they made an A, B, made a really good grade. So it's very, very possible. Okay, but I want to take this a step further because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the immediate, and maybe, in the example of the deadlift, maybe you lifting 430 pounds, maybe that wasn't, a big deal to you. Maybe you're so stuck on the 450. I want you to think back, think back years, right? Think back to those times in your life where you failed something. Maybe it was small. An example that I have when I was a little kid, right? I went to this church camp and I was gonna do this climbing wall. It was like a rock wall, right? And it was part of a little obstacle course, and I was super excited to do it. Part of me was also, terrified. I think I was like 9, 10, maybe 11 at the time. And when I was like 10, 11 years old, I was really out of shape. I didn't really know what it took to do a rock climbing wall, but my friends were doing it, so I was like, oh, I want to do it too. And I remember I got halfway up this wall, and the first half, it was a pretty tall wall. It was about 20, 25 feet tall. And I remember the first half of the easy side was slanted, so it was pretty easy. Pretty much anybody could do that. But once you got up to that vertical side, it was a little bit tougher. And I remember I got up to that vertical side, and I just, like, my body froze up. I couldn't do it. I was scared. I was scared of the height. I was scared that I couldn't pull my body. I didn't know what I was doing. I became very embarrassed. I was looking around. Everybody was watching me from my church. most of my friends were doing it. They already had made it to the top, and it was, great. And I was up there and I started crying, and I remember seeing pictures of that, and I just remembered the embarrassment that I felt. I remember feeling like a failure. I remember just coming back down and just feeling defeated, right? Feeling just defeated the rest of that day, the rest of the church camp. I just felt inadequate. I felt terrible, right? And I remember it stuck with me. I remember having, even at a young age, I remember thinking, I have a choice, right? I have a choice. I can either let this failure define me, or I can change something. I can be better. I can do something with this. I can turn that failure into fuel, okay? So that next year, I remember we got a little pull-up bar for our doorway. And I remember I was just hanging from that bar a lot. I started to do a couple pull-ups. And between that year, I got pretty decent at pull-ups. I still wasn't very fit by any means. I didn't really start working out until I was probably about 15. That's when I started taking it seriously. But I could do a couple pull-ups. I could do pull-ups before I could do push-ups, which is crazy. But remember, came back to that church camp the next year, and I remember doing the obstacle course again. And I remember I scaled that first wall easily. It was no big deal. I was ready for it. I was prepared. I put it in my mind I was going to do it. And then, to get down, you had to go down the zip line. And so I went down the zip line, and I came back, and there was another side of the wall, which was harder. It was just straight up vertical. And I said to myself, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this. And so I remember going up that vertical wall, and from the positioning and just the timing of the day, nobody was really watching. Nobody was really on that vertical wall. I remember maybe one of my parents, was. But I remember going up that hard side of the wall, and for me, looking back, I remember thinking, like, at the time, I wanted people to see it, but looking back, especially now, I was so proud of myself. That feeling of, just the year prior, I couldn't even get up that easy wall. Now I was up the more difficult wall. And I took that's just one example. I took that, and every time in life that I kind of ran into difficulty or I felt like a failure, I would think back to those little victories. And so you can look back, you can go back. David Goggins talks about this a little bit. If you don't know who that is, definitely check him out. Most people know who he is by now. He's a Navy SEAL. He basically, in his mid to late 20s, dropped a lot of weight, became a Navy SEAL. He failed Navy SEAL school 2-3 times, but finally made it through, became one of the toughest people on the planet. So you should definitely look into him. But he calls this basically going back in time into the cookie jar. Basically, it's like whenever you're at a low point, pulling a cookie out of that cookie jar and using that for fuel, using that to propel yourself. So you got to take it in stride, guys. You can't get stuck on what you didn't do. Focus on what you can do. Focus on what you have done, and realize that part of being human is failing. Part of being human is failing. That's not to give you an excuse, right? But that's just to say, hey, you can turn your failure into fuel, okay? Another more recent example of this that I could give is, recently came to a point in life where kind of lost it all at one point. It was kind of at rock bottom, and there was a time where I just said, okay, like, what's the point? There's no point in going on. There's no point in trying anymore. And, by the grace of God, it was like lightning struck me, and it was just like, it was like a choice. that you have to make. And I remember bouncing back from that, and I was able to find a job I really enjoyed. I was able to make money. I was able to do a lot of things that I wasn't able to do before, and was able to pick myself out of that. So guys, there's always a choice to make, okay? There's always a choice. You can let the failure define you, or you can use that as your fuel. And if you guys got any experiences, or you got any questions, you got anything to add to that, go ahead and add it in the comments below. Go ahead and drop a like and subscribe while you're at it, just so you can see more of this content. But I want to be able to help you guys, want to be able to give a little bit of encouragement. You know, I know a lot of people feel down in the dumps right now. A lot of people feel purposeless, and they don't think that there's going to be anything better from their current situation, but you always have a choice. So guys, keep going, turn that failure into fuel, take it one day at a time, think back, be confident in yourself. I promise guys, you're going to get out of that dark pit. So, all right guys, till the next one.